Hey everyone, welcome to another Cultivated Culture career success story. I'm here with Rick McGavin. Rick, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Oh, no problem, man. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So you are a front end developer at Red Ventures, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome, man. So tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you're liking it.
Oh, I love it. Best job I've had. Honestly, at any point in time, I can go play a bowling game, if I need to take a break or I don't play basketball, but I could go play basketball. They take care of us really well there, and I love working there, definitely for sure.
Awesome. Basketball, bowling, I mean, that's the definition of dream job, right? I love it.
It is. I watch other people play basketball.
Awesome. But it wasn't always this way, right? And that's kind of how you and I got introduced. So I'd love to rewind things fully all the way back to the customer service delivery manager days. So tell us a little bit first about that, what that was like, what you were doing, and then if you wouldn't mind leading into what spurred the career change. So kind of what led you to say, you know what, it's time for something else.
Sure. I started in 2012 in the customer service space, and I was just an agent, and I was able to really rapidly work my way up to service delivery manager, which meant I had about 300 indirect direct reports that I was managing there. Um, Over time, I didn't care for the way the industry runs in general. And my role in it specifically, like I just didn't enjoy being a leader for the way we had to manage the company. Um, and I knew it was likely our client wouldn't renew us. So I just started thinking about, like, what would I really want to do? Because I probably have some time here. I can figure out what I want to do. And it wasn't even so much what I wanted to do. I actually started looking for what's in demand where I live. And that's when I really ran into, like, okay, everybody's hiring front end engineers, front end developers, things like that. So then I started to dig into that. And for about a year, actually, like I just hardcore everyday studied. Um, Fairly minimal expenses. You can really learn a lot online for, like, you could do it for free. I don't mind paying a few bucks to just make my life a little easier though.
If
Um,
you don't mind me asking, what are some of the free resources that you did use though that you found to be most helpful? I know there's a couple out there, but would love to hear what you personally thought was great.
I used Free Code Camp a lot,
Hmm.
which actually that's sort of how I stumbled across your article. Was
Hmm.
they I think they put your one of your big ones out there,
Yep.
and lynda.com, while it's not free, a lot of people don't realize, like, you have a lot of libraries with a free library card. You can get a free lynda.com account, and that's a really good resource for just free stuff. Udemy has some free things, udemy.com. And the stuff that's not free, you can get on sale usually for like 10 or 11 bucks. They
Hmm.
seem to just have sales all the time. Uh, so those were my main ones that I really just picked up courses from there and ran with it. And the main thing was really building a portfolio of work that pretty much said, I may not have a degree in this or whatever, but here's the work. I can do the work. And that says a
Awesome.
lot.
Yeah, I like the Linda library card mention. I think that's overlooked a lot. I stumbled across that and I went out and got a New York Public Library card for that and for just to start taking out audiobooks because you can do that now too for free.
Yeah.
And audiobooks are like crazy expensive these days. So double life hack there. I love it. And I also love that you said that you studied every single day. I think it's so important to be super consistent when you're learning something new. I think, I don't know if you found this personally, but for me, it's way better to do a couple hours or even 1 or 2 hours every day versus like a 9 hour binge on Saturday. It just helps retain. It helps you kind of make those connections when you're working and thinking about it every day. So that's awesome, man. How long did it take you to get to a point where you felt sort of comfortable to apply for jobs, or were you out there applying for jobs while you were learning and kind of took the mentality of, if I do get something, I'll kind of make it up on the back end, pun intended.
I started kind of reaching out early. but not even as early as some people say to do. You want to probably start making connections right away. First day you even know how to code, it's not going to hurt. It can
Hmm.
only help.
Definitely.
I actually waited, and I kind of had a weird thing where I knew where I wanted to work, which was Red Ventures. I just didn't necessarily know exactly how to get there. And I think after about 6 months of just studying, I became comfortable. Well, I got comfortable like reaching out to someone there, but I also really started to realize then like I need to find out what they're working with, and then if I know what they work with, because like even in just front end development alone, there's so much to know, so much to learn. I figured I could make myself most appealing by learning what they use,
Hmm.
that's what prompted me. I actually just spontaneously and randomly reached out to a developer there. I literally just Facebook searched front end developers of Red Ventures, and it was one of the first few people. I just clicked on him. Turned out he grew up like a couple hours from where I grew up. I just sent him a message, and I just plainly explained to him like who I was, what I was trying to do. I'm trying to learn, and he was very helpful. He gave me a lot of feedback, and um, when it was actually I was telling someone about that, and that's when they told me about your article, the one that Free Code Camp did, and they were like, check this out. They were like, he's kind of talking about what you're talking about, and I read that, and I was like, wow, you took this to a whole nother level. I'm like, and ultimately, it was like my kind of idea of like I should really just talk to people who work there, because that's sort of what I was thinking is like, how would I find out what they used if I worked there? Well, I would just ask people.
Yep.
So uh, we often think people are farther away than they really are. Almost the whole world is a message away, is a tweet away, and you never know, somebody might reply. So,
Totally. And it's surprising, actually. I felt the same way when I started reaching out. And now I joke. I just got coffee with somebody a couple minutes before this, and we were talking about we met online. And he and I were both saying how, like, most of our friends recently that we made are all online. But, like, 10 years ago, my mom would have gotten, like, really mad if I went out to meet somebody that I, like, found on Instagram, right? So it's crazy how things are changing, but that's kind of becoming the norm, and you totally took advantage. But that wasn't a super straightforward process, right? There were definitely some
no.
challenges in there. So talk us through some of those. Like, what did you run into that kind of held you back, and even made you doubt yourself at some points?
A lot of it had to do with not necessarily knowing what I didn't know, which is where I took that step to find out, um, get feedback. I think that's key is finding out what you don't know. And the easiest way to do that is to try and get that information from somebody else, actually, somebody who's already been there. Um, I would say there's a lot of internal struggle as well, no matter how it's going. There's a lot of moments where you're like, I already, you may or may not have an established career. I did. I was like, I have this going. I don't necessarily have to do this. But I knew I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. And if I was coming home working every day, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, I knew this is something I liked. You don't work that hard for something you don't enjoy. Um, and that was, I would say, the hardest and biggest battle for me was really just keeping the faith that one day this was going to turn for me, because um, really, I think with a lot of this, you don't really fail till you give up. If you hang in there and you just keep plugging away, you keep trying, you don't give up, it's gonna work out. Um, but that's where most people tend to go wrong. Is they lose faith in themselves, or they just don't think it's worth it anymore. And I,
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. I love the line. You're never really out until you say you're out, like until you call it yourself, right? I think that's fantastic. But also, as somebody who's coming from a non-traditional background, how was that received when you first started reaching out and you first started applying?
it was tough at first. I talked to a ton of recruiters, various people, because I didn't get a lot. of response at all. I kept a spreadsheet. I think I had at least 100 applications out there.
Hmm.
Um,
Nice.
and
The century mark. I like it.
yeah, right. I think ultimately, like by the end of the whole search, I really only ever even heard back from somewhere between 5 to 10. So
Hmm.
that's where that whole like this is dispiriting thing comes in from.
Totally.
You only need one yes to make 99 no's worth it.
Yep.
Um, and then I think the key thing there, getting in front of somebody essentially I could really talk to. Um, so I was able to get the interview, and I think that's where I was able to really kind of shift, at least for getting the position at Red Ventures. Um, the main thing there was I was able to, I read a lot about their website. Like I understood their culture by the time I went in there. I was super prepared. Um, getting, basically getting an advocate internally to refer me
Hmm.
really helped me close the gap. Probably more than anything. After I was able to talk to him, he saw how passionate I was. So he went and he told the other people there. That landed me the interview. Once I had the interview and I was able to get in front of them, it was really just a matter of selling. It was just being honest a lot. Not even, I don't even want to say it's selling. It's like, here's what I did. You tell someone you spent hours every day on your own and you have the work to show for it, it just really goes a long way. I did have some issues where early on, like I wouldn't even necessarily get looked at because of all the experience that I had
Hmm.
as a manager and so on. And some recruiters even said, you might be getting passed over because they are afraid you'll come in and try to take over or various other things.
Okay.
Um, so I actually downplayed it in my resume eventually, some of it. I had a professional resume writer work on it actually. Because I got let go of my last job, there was like a little transitional period, and they hired her as a resume writer for us, and she fixed it up, and we actually downplayed all of the like stuff that didn't necessarily apply. Like it stayed
Hmm.
on the resume, but it didn't take up quite as much space. And then we really upplayed all the learning, the projects that I did, and so on.
And I think that takes a lot. Like, it's not easy to downplay all this experience that you spent a lot of time
Yeah.
building. But it's so important. I was actually talking to another career coach recently who had an MBA grad who was looking for a job and she couldn't find anything. And they did a similar thing. They actually took her MBA experience and took it off the resume. And immediately that turned things around. And it just happened that the job she was applying for, they knew that MBA candidates would come in and expect 10, 20% more than what the average or kind of just above the average was, and they weren't willing to pay it. And so she started getting offers. She was happy with the salary. It was still great without that 10, 20 extra. But just something to think about for people who are listening, because I think a lot of us, we spend 4 years in college getting a degree, and then we go out and get a job, and especially if it sucks, you're like, well, I put in all that time at this job I hated. Like, I can't just downplay it. But sometimes you gotta let go and move forward.
Yep.
So one other question I had for you. You mentioned the advocate internally, and I love that strategy. I'm a big fan. Was that the original guy that you reached out to on Facebook, or was it somebody else?
Yep. Yeah, it ended up being him in the end. I had reached out to other people too, kind of maybe some more director level there and so on. Um, I didn't get all of them to respond. Now that I work there, I think it was because they have great email filtering. Honestly, I don't think it ever got to them. But Facebook, you can find them on there anyways. I should have just stuck with Facebook, I guess. Or LinkedIn. Any of them work. I've had a lot of success with pretty much a lot of them. What I can definitely say that's interesting I felt about development in a lot of places, at least with my interactions, is like senior developers, even mid-level developers are often really good advocates. Um, because a lot of times, they may or may not report to somebody who does or does not know how to do what you do.
Hmm.
So another like senior developer or someone's usually really good to have in your corner. or even just another developer to say like, hey, he's good. I know what he's doing. If you go above them, then somebody might just ignore
Right.
it
Totally.
because they're
Sorry, I just I like this train, and I wanted to ask, like, what was the discrepancy in time between when you initially reached out to this guy on Facebook and when he referred you into the company?
So initially, I talked to him. It was September 2016,
Okay.
and then he gave me like an official referral March 2017.
Okay.
Some of that is because he literally he I don't want to say he tore it down. He gave me very polite feedback. He just gave me like the feedback that I needed to make my portfolio well acceptable. I mean it wasn't too good. I can't lie about that now. It's better now. He gave me a lot of feedback. So I spent a lot of time focusing on the feedback that he gave me actually. And when I went back to him, I was like, "Hey, I worked on everything you told me to. Do you mind looking at my stuff again?" And he felt pretty obligated, I think, by then. I don't know if he expected me to be like, I kind of took everything you said to heart and ran with it for the past 3 months. Uh,
Yeah, you hooked him. I love it.
then
Um,
then he once he saw I had been doing all that, he referred me right away. And it actually, I would say, if you ever wanted a case where the referral very clearly changed everything, this was one of them. I had applied, I want to say very first week of March, and I actually didn't even get a referral. I was just like, I don't know, straight panic mode one night. I'm like, I got to get applications out. And I did it. And I didn't get it. And then, like 2 weeks later, I had finally synced up with him again because we hadn't been able to really connect. And we got to talking, and he was like, Wait, you didn't, they told you no? And I'm like, Yeah. He's like, Yeah, okay, apply again. Put me on the referral. I'll talk to someone. You'll hear from someone. And that was it. I applied with the same resume, the same exact everything, except I put the referral's name in this time.
I love it. I love it, dude. That is it right there. And it's fantastic, especially the piece where you talked to him, you got the feedback, but then you followed up. So many times, like you have that. The best analogy that I always like to use is when somebody really wants to get in shape, right? They're like, oh, it's my New Year's resolution. So they go talk to all their friends, and they're like, their fit friends. They're like, what do you do? And their friends are like, oh, well, I eat this way, and I go to the gym 6 times a week, and I lift these weights, and I do this. And then the person who asked for the advice is like, great, thanks, and then doesn't take any of it. And you're like, well, why did I even give you the advice?
Yep.
And that's the rule. And usually the exception is the guy like yourself who actually goes out, does the work, comes back and says, I listened to you. I took what you said to heart. I went out and took action on it, and here's what I've got to show. And that is so powerful, as you just said, and that's fantastic. Would you mind sharing like a couple of the suggestions or recommendations that he gave you?
Yeah, sure. Now, kind of like a little preface is it may not apply to like every company or across the board.
Sure.
Um, Definitely for where we were at the time and what they were aiming for, it was definitely the right kind of feedback. You'll see a lot, especially in the front end development space right now, is it's JavaScript crazy. It's all about JavaScript, and it can be easy to accidentally not really do a good job learning HTML and CSS and just focus on JavaScript. And I did that really bad. And that was the kind of the key feedback that he gave me was, I didn't really know how to build certain types of websites like responsively without using a framework. And they were really focused on you should be able to do this without a framework at this company and things like that. He's like, make sure you get better at CSS, learn SCSS or SAS, and learn responsive design without frameworks. So it got really specific down to that level, and he was actually like, your JavaScript, considering you would come in at entry level, is probably really better than it even needs to be. So you can kind of hold back there and focus on like CSS and HTML and getting that right. And that's exactly what I did. And it can be, I think, especially for people just getting into front end development, it can be easy to kind of just go straight into JavaScript. That's where all the functionality and the fun is. But but a lot of my day I'm writing HTML and CSS, and it's not going anywhere, and you got to get
Mhm.
really good at it.
So, what kind of projects did you use to kind of build that out? Did you create some of your own, or was this more like you went out and found some courses that taught how to build stuff without frameworks, et cetera, focus more on HTML, CSS, or did you do a little bit of both?
Both, a little bit of both. That was the very first thing that I did was I found a Udemy course that was going to teach me HTML, CSS, responsive design without frameworks. Um, and I went through, built that project. Didn't use that project in my portfolio. Most of my portfolio projects were actually the projects that were part of the Free Code Camp curriculum.
Nice.
I tried to make them I tried to just make them as nicely designed, more so than the examples, or just tried to give it additional functionality that maybe wasn't there. Try to take it to that next level than the example that they give you. Um, and then over time, as I was applying, you'll get people that give you like take home projects. And whenever I built one of those, if it was worth putting in my portfolio, some of them are so small it's not worth it. If it was, I put it in there.
Nice.
Um, Even if I didn't get the job, it went on my portfolio because
Awesome.
some of them I spent a lot of time on, and they turned out really cool in my opinion. Even if I got passed up, and I'm like, this is going up. I don't care.
That's awesome. And so that's a great segue into the actual interview process. Was there a significant technical piece to that for you? Or did they run you through, did they give you a take home project? Did they run you through some stuff on the spot? What did that look like?
Yeah, they have a really good process. First up, they give you a recruiter will call and talk to you and kind of just get the basics, make sure that you can communicate and so on. Mostly just get a feel for you, see if you have a pleasant vibe, and administer like the next part. And they give you for front end developers, they gave me like a take home test. Um, and I don't know if it's changed now, but at the time they weren't too hard on like the time frame. Basically, as long as I told them when I could get it back, and as long as I could kind of meet that, they were comfortable.
Cool.
As long as I didn't tell them it would take a month because it was a small project. I so I just got that taken care of, and then if they like your work there, they'll bring you in, and I had like a half day on site interview, and that is where they really dig in. First, I had to meet with a couple of front end directors. Then I met with a couple like senior front end developers, and then you meet with someone on like a business side, like an associate or an account manager, and they do the kind of more of the culture fit type of interview and whatnot. Technical wise, they didn't like make me do a whiteboard or really kind of grill me too hard. I think they're really progressive in that sense, especially in that they will try to ask you questions kind of to the point where you're going to have to say you don't know at a certain point. And that's something I think they were kind of looking for, because it's important to know your limitations.
Hmm.
Um, you don't really want to work with somebody who thinks they know it all or isn't really good at taking feedback and things like that, or can't admit that, hey, this is something I'm not good at and I need to work on, because they're usually really, really hard to work with. And I was very cognizant of that as I was doing my interview, actually.
Awesome. Awesome. So, I mean, obviously, incredible journey from like total career pivot because obviously, customer delivery is not in tech or in the programming space at all, right? So, totally self-taught,
Right.
which is
Hmm.
fantastic. There's a lot of people out there that are looking to make a similar move, right? Especially into development, because that's definitely one of the hot careers today. I think a lot of people saw what you saw when they get out there and they look at what's in demand and where's the
Yep.
money at these days. So, what's your number one piece of advice? And also, what's one mistake that everybody out there what advice should they take, and what's one mistake that they should avoid if they're trying to replicate your results here?
Um, Kind of definitely back to, keep the faith in yourself. If you want it, hang in there. I definitely believe you cannot fail if you don't give up. Um, and be disciplined for sure every day. That's what it takes. Every single day. Doesn't matter how you feel. If you feel like it or not, you got to do it. Um, those are definitely, I would say discipline is probably the
Awesome.
biggest thing that's going to take you to be successful is putting it in on the days you don't feel like it.
I love it, man. That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it, and I think a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing it. So, yeah, thanks for hanging out with me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
You got it. We'll talk to you soon, Rick. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.